Welcome to this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on theories of crime and deviance, looking at the work of David Matza. Although nominally seen as a functionalist, Matza approached the study of crime and deviance from an individual rather than a social angle, and is often used as an alternative explanation to the subcultural theories that came to dominate functionalist thought in the mid-1950s. Matza suggested that it was not the membership of a subculture that caused crime, but rather the individual's level of control over their own behaviours. He also suggested that criminals are rational beings that look to justify their actions in several ways, what he called techniques of neutralisation. In his work, Delinquency and Drift, Matza suggested that there was very little difference between those committing deviant activities and other members of society. As opposed to some theories that suggested criminals had sociopathic tendencies or were resistant to authority, Matza suggested that criminals have similar values to other members of society, and even demonstrated feelings of outrage at certain acts of criminality and deviance. This differs from functionalist approaches that suggest that deviant behaviour comes from bad people. Instead, Matza argued that most people drift in and out of deviant and criminal behaviours at some point in their lives, most notably in their late teens and early 20s, and this was because individuals have two distinct sets of values that they alternate between. These were conventional values and subterranean values. Conventional values were the values and behaviours that people displayed when taking on the conventional roles that they performed on a daily basis. People displayed appropriate behaviours when looking after children, when with family, when at work or in education. However, Matza also suggested that people have a second set of values, subterranean values. They were impulsive and almost unconscious behaviours that individuals were able to control or express in appropriate settings. Greed, a desire for power, lust, prejudice, aggression and malice were some of those values that Matza suggested people hid behind their day-to-day persona. According to Matza, crime was caused by people being unable to control these urges in an appropriate way, and this would lead to criminal and deviant behaviours. Interestingly, Matza suggested that males in their teens and 20s were most likely to display these values at inappropriate times. The rationale behind this age group was that teenagers and young adults are least likely to have a certain place in society. They are too old to be children and too young to be adults, and in trying to assert their identity, would often allow subterranean values to take over. Matza also suggested that these delinquents were rational beings, despite displaying irrational behaviour. They looked to justify their actions through what he called techniques of neutralisation, and these were designed to alleviate any guilt that they felt for their actions. He later applied these techniques to the ways in which states look to justify state crime, alongside psychs, and we'll revisit these in a later video in this series. There were 5 techniques of neutralisation that Matza identified. Firstly, denial of responsibility. This is where the victim would look to blame other circumstances, despite them being guilty. Denial of the victim, arguing that they were provoked in some way by the victim's behaviour, a common technique used in cases of assault and sexual assault. Denial of injury, when stealing from others or businesses, the justification of the crime was that the other party could easily replace or would not miss the item being stolen. A fourth technique was condemnation of the condemned. That is, the criminal would justify their actions by stating that others commit the crime and get away with it, so why shouldn't they? And finally, an appeal to higher loyalties, that their actions were in defence of others, or that they had to conform to the actions of others. Matza's ideas do have some worth, but there are also some limitations to his work. He offers no explanation as to why crime is used to assert control, and not other more socially appropriate actions. There is also no attempt to group delinquency into the wider social structures. According to Matza, the decision is made by the individual, rather than being the product of social forces. And finally, it's difficult to measure or indeed prove some of the concepts that Matza suggests. How does a researcher measure drift? and how do they observe subterranean values? That concludes this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on theories of crime and deviance, looking at the work of David Matza. Thanks for watching.